Welcome to LA's Listening Lounge with stories you can hear and words you can feel. Today, we bring you a heartfelt winter romance, The Lottery, where love and trust shine brighter than the city lights on a snowy night. So grab your favorite blanket, settle in, and let the warmth of Ella and Danny's journey fill your heart. Chapter 1. The Shattered Engagement. Ella Stone's world was built on the comforting predictability of routine. The soft click of her heels on polished office floors, the hum of city lights outside her apartment window, the weight of her engagement. I ring, a small but constant pressure on her finger always reminding her of promises made. At 32, she was a marketing executive at a bustling firm, engaged to Jacob, whose laughter had filled her heart with warmth and whose steady presence had seemed reassuringly permanent. But on a cold night tinged with the scent of rain, Ella's life unraveled in a way she hadn't imagined. She was staying over at Jacob's apartment after what she thought was a wonderful dinner. She had showered and put on her bedclothes when she was just about to exit the bedroom to see what Jacob was doing. As Ella placed her hand on the knob, something told her not to open the door. Just stand there and listen. She heard Jacob's muffled voice in the hallway, the low cadence revealing tension, the words, "I don't think I can go through with this wedding. I still have feelings for you," slipped through the crack in the door, each syllable sharp as a shearing knife. Did she really hear Jacob correctly? Ella firmly pressed her ear to the door, hoping her ears had deceived her. "Don't hang up, babe. I mean it this time. I really will call things off with her. Just give me some more time." Ella placed her hand over her mouth. She wasn't sure if she would scream or throw up. Both would not adequately release the pain she felt pulsating through her entire body. She stood there for several minutes, wondering what she should do next. The air grew thick with each breath, the metallic taste of copper rising in her mouth, her heart pounding against her ribcage as if trying to escape. The distant rumble of traffic outside now sounded foreign and jarring, a harsh underscore to her spiraling thoughts. Even the familiar scratch of the bedroom rug against her bare feet felt strange and unwelcome, as if the textures of her life no longer belonged to her. She decided not to leave the room and pretended to be asleep when Jacob finally joined her. The covers cocooned her trembling limbs that Jacob assumed were because the room was cold. He adjusted the thermostat and kissed her goodnight. Outside, the city continued its restless dance, but inside, time slowed. Ella lay still, willing tears not to fall from her eyes. The engagement ring burned against her skin, a shackle rather than a promise at that moment. In the pre-dawn hush, she quietly gathered her things, leaving anything that could be easily replaced, and left. She did not see a reason to leave a note of explanation. As far as Ella was concerned, she was doing them both a favor by leaving this way. The door closing behind her sounded final, signaling she was leaving an obvious pathological liar behind. Days blurred and seemed to turn rapidly. Ella's normal short walk to work seemed longer and mechanical. The coffee at her desk, no matter what she did, tasted bitter and cold. The bright lights at the office felt harsh on tired eyes, and the usual background chatter sounded distant and distorted, like echoes from another life. At night, her apartment was overflowing with silence. Each tick of her brown wall clock pressed against her chest, the familiar ticking now almost unbearable. She found herself absently running her fingers over the textured couch cushions, remembering evenings she and Jacob had spent curled up together. Now those soft fibers only reminded her of everything lost. Ella felt like she was suffocating as the night went on. She longed for something, clarity, release, a voice that wasn't her own, echoing the loneliness she was feeling. Chapter 2, A Stroke of Luck. Rain streaked the windows in restless silver lines as Ella ducked into the corner store, her umbrella trailing icy droplets behind her like footprints on polished tile. The familiar aroma of hot food and coffee curled around her, bringing a fleeting comfort that didn't quite reach her bones. As she lingered by the snack aisle, Ella's gaze landed on the lottery display, a bright splash of neon and blinking lights that seemed to pulse with possibility. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low growl that pressed against the quiet inside. Not one to gamble, she hesitated, fingertips hovering over her wallet. On impulse, she bought $5 worth of tickets, the slip of paper rough and insubstantial in her hands, its texture grounding her for a moment before she tucked it away in the deep compartment of her purse, almost ashamed of the small secret hope she felt. Weeks blurred together, marked only by the soft glow of sunlight filtering through her apartment's white blinds and the steady mechanical sorting of receipts at her kitchen table. The rhythm, pick up, scan, stack, was soothing, familiar, restoring a sense of belonging in the wake of quiet rejection. When the lottery ticket slipped out and fluttered to the hardwood floor, Ella barely noticed, her mind lost in the haze of routine. After lunch and a restless nap that left her feeling colder, she returned to the ticket, fingers trembling as she typed the numbers into her phone. At first, she barely registered the patterns forming. But as her breath caught, shallow and rapid, Ella's heart began to thud in her chest, loud and insistent, echoing in the hush of her apartment. Every number matched. Her world tilted, the room spinning in the periphery as a flood of disbelief surged through her. She checked the ticket again and again, 4 more times, each duplication failing to anchor her to reality. The shock melted into a wild, giddy happiness, her body prickling with electric relief, tears carving silent tracks down her cheeks as she pressed the ticket to her lips, the paper crinkling with the force of her grasp. Yet beneath the exhilaration, a wave of anxiety crept in, chilling her skin despite the sunlight. The apartment felt colder, air heavy and unmoving, the hum of the refrigerator an intrusive drone in the background. Ella drew the spa robe closer around her, the Egyptian cotton soft yet unable to warm the nervous ache in her chest. She stared at the ticket, her mind racing with memories of scraped-together rent and childhood nights spent wishing for something more than the bare comfort of security. What did winning mean now, with so much already lost? The windfall felt like both a blessing and a burden, a promise of freedom that threatened to expose old wounds. She wondered if she could buy happiness, or perhaps just safety, a better lock on the door, a fleeting sense of control. Every indulgence, the fragrance of lilies and gardenias in her living room, the rich taste of artisanal coffee brought both relief and unease. Ella lived with the constant, gnawing fear that someone would discover her secret, that fortune would paint a target on her back. The anxiety shaped her days, checking and rechecking the locks, her ears straining for unfamiliar footsteps in the hallway, circling the block under the pretense of caution, while her heart hammered with a relentless, disjointed rhythm. Even the familiar chill of her apartment seemed sharper, the silence pressing against her like a cold sheet, amplifying every small sound and shadow. She withdrew further from Emma, her best friend, whose texts pinged hopefully through the thick quiet. "You seem distant. Is everything okay? Can I come put eyes on you for myself?" Ella's reply was always the same, deflecting concern with practiced ease. "Everything is fine, and I'm just not in the mood for company right now." In truth, Ella was haunted by the memory of Jacob, her ex-fiancé, the sound of his voice behind the bedroom door, his whispered words slicing through her. Trust. Sometimes, in the deepest part of night, she would relive that moment, the metallic taste of betrayal, her body rigid with heartbreak, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would give her away. It was a wound she guarded, a barrier that kept Emma and the world at arm's length. Ella wondered if she would ever feel truly safe, or if the lottery win would prove to be just another brittle mask, an illusion of control in a life still shaped by loss. Chapter 3, The Unexpected Meeting. Months had passed before Ella finally emerged from her shell, coaxed out by Emma's persistent warmth and gentle hands. The apartment was filled with the soft light of afternoon, streaming through sheer curtains and painting golden patches on the worn hardwood. Emma searched through Ella's closet, the rustle of fabric and the faint scent of burning lavender candles swirling around them. "Look, Ellie, you've been hiding for far too long." Emma's tone was light, but her eyes held a steady concern as she held up a flowing dress. It was made of soft cotton and very inviting. "It's time to let Jacob the Flake fade into the past. You need to get out and see what's waiting for you out there, my friend." Her words, though playful, carried the echo of her own heartbreak, a silent promise not to let Ella fade away like she once had after her own loss. Emma's motivation ran deeper than cheerful prodding. She knew too well how heartbreak could shrink one's world into lonely corners and silent screens. Ella offered a dry smile, her voice muffled by the cashmere blanket she clutched. "Honestly, Emma, I have zero interest in what possibilities are out there. I'm perfectly content with Netflix, YouTube, and staying in my pajamas." She watched as Emma's fingers trailed over the textures of silk and cotton, a familiar ritual that made the closet feel less like a vault and more like a promise. Emma paused, arms loaded with dresses, and fixed Ella with a mock glare. "Look, ma'am, I'm not taking no for an answer. Besides, it's just a book club meeting. I doubt there will be any pathological liars in attendance. Seriously, what would someone even have to lie about at a book club?" Ella tried to match Emma's playful tone, but her laugh caught slightly in her throat. "That he loves books but has never even heard of Cat in the Hat. let alone know the Empress of Ocean Park is actually based on a book. Their laughter melded with the hum of the apartment, the air thick with shared history and the comfort of old jokes. Emma tossed the soft floral dress at Ella, its fabric fluttering through the sunbeams. "Come on, Book Patrol. Get dressed so we'll be on time." "You know I can't do this alone. I need backup." Ella hesitated, her fingers brushing over the delicate fabric. For a moment, she was transported back to a night with Jacob, the sugary scent of his aftershave lingering in the air, his words flattering and calculated, the way he'd smiled with secrets behind his eyes. She'd trusted that smile, only to learn trust could be a razor disguised as a ribbon. The memory made her chest tighten, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the dress. "Fine," she managed, offering a half smile. "I'll be ready in about 30 minutes. Emma raised an eyebrow. 30 minutes? For a dress? If you're forcing me into the wild, at least let me put on a little makeup." Ella's laugh was softer this time, gratitude threading through her nerves. An hour later, the two stepped into Flavor's book nook, greeted immediately by the comforting swirl of cinnamon and fresh coffee. The light was gentle, the kind that glowed on pretty tabletops and made every spine on the bookshelf gleam invitingly. Ella's heels pressed into the thick carpet, muffling her footsteps as Emma squeezed her hand, her nails bright in cheerful pink. "Promise me you'll try to have fun tonight," Emma whispered, her voice low as she glanced around at the cozy crowd. The background hum of laughter and softly inaudible page numbers mingled with the warm aroma of baked goods. Ella took a slow breath, feeling the plush fabric of her dress against her skin, a small armor against old fears. She told herself she hadn't braved the world just to become another shadow in the corner. While Emma fetched food and drinks, Ella found herself drawn to a corner table reserved for the club. Her fingers traced the smoothness of the tabletop, grounding her. That's when she noticed Danny Tellez at the far end, his hands broad and rough-edged, the skin marked by a life spent working with wood. The soft glow from the pendant lights caught the lines of his face, highlighting a quiet strength. He sat with his thumb moving idly over a battered book cover, his presence rooted and calm amid the gentle chaos of the cafe. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, time seemed to still. Something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of curiosity, of understanding. Danny's voice, when it came, was gentle, the gravel in it softened by warmth. Ella felt herself tense, instinctively wary. She remembered how easily Jacob had constructed walls out of words, how quickly affection had twisted into deceit. The need to protect herself battled with the subtle pull of something new, something safe. She looked away, the familiar ache of doubt tugging at her. Yet as the evening unfolded, she couldn't ignore the way Danny's laughter rang out, unforced and genuine, curling through the air like wood smoke. There was a vulnerability in his presence, a sense that what he offered was real, not rehearsed. Ella felt it in the way he listened, his eyes attentive, never darting around the room in search of someone else. After the discussion, as Ella lingered by the pastry case, Danny approached her, his steps slow and unhurried. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Ella, caught off guard by the sincerity in his crooked smile, hesitated, a heartbeat's pause where old fears rose and receded. She nodded, her voice barely more than a whisper. They settled into quiet conversation, Danny sharing stories of sawdust and sunlit workshops. "I love shaping something rough into something useful," he said, rubbing at a scar on his finger. "Wood's got scars, but you work with the grain, not against it." There was an honesty in his words, a gentle hope that pressed against Ella's guarded heart. She felt a flicker of safety, a warmth she hadn't realized she missed. Later, as Emma bumped into her side with a teasing grin, "He's cute, Ellie, and he listens to you, not just to himself. A far cry from the flake you're used to." Ella caught herself smiling despite the gnawing uncertainty. The lighting, the laughter, the scent of cinnamon and coffee, all of it wove a fragile shield against the past. But as she watched Danny, Ella wondered if she could let herself trust again, or if every new beginning would always be shadowed by old betrayals and lingering doubt. Chapter 4. Walls and Windows. The weeks that followed were filled with tentative steps, coffee meetups at the Riverside Cafe, long walks along the Riverwalk where the scent of various foods from local trucks mingled with the sound of flowing water. The gentle ripple of the river created the perfect ambiance for their meals, cocooning Ella and Danny in a world of their own. Danny was patient, his gestures quiet but meaningful. He always considered Ella, opening doors for her, positioning himself protectively on the sidewalk, and handing her a steaming mug of coffee on cold mornings. His hand would rest lightly on her back as they navigated crowded streets. He never pressed. His presence soothed more than it demanded, offering a safe haven she hadn't realized she needed. One evening, while they sat on Danny's porch, wrapped in the thick scent of sawdust and fresh rain, Danny asked, "Would you be comfortable joining me at a convention? I can secure a separate room for you and take care of all the expenses." Ella smiled, nerves fluttering beneath her calm. "Danny, you can take me just about anywhere as long as you don't take me for granted," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Danny replied softly, "Only a fool would take you for granted, and nothing about me is foolish, beautiful." He gave her a gentle pat on the back, his warmth grounding her. He went on to explain how he started attending the convention and why he wanted to share more of his world with her. As Danny shared a story from his past, his fingers traced the grain of a handmade chair, his voice wavering. "I started this business after my father died. We used to build together. He taught me that mistakes leave marks, but they make the piece unique. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll never measure up to him. My dream is to build a workshop where kids can come and learn, where imperfections are celebrated." Ella listened, the vulnerability in his words touching her deeply. She hesitated, then quietly told him about Jacob and how the betrayal had shaped her fears. Danny was supportive, responding with warmth and reassurance. "Jacob must have been out of his mind to lose you," Danny said, squeezing her hand. "But I'm glad, otherwise we might never have met." Ella nodded, her heart leaning towards opening up to him in turn, though she still held back the secret of her lottery win. What they had seemed almost perfect, and she didn't want her newfound fortune to cast a shadow over their growing trust. The secret pressed against her, a silent, invisible wall delaying progress. Danny sensed her hesitation but only smiled, choosing not to press the issue. "We've both got our pasts," he said, gently rubbing her shoulder. "I just want us to be honest about the present as we move toward the future." Back at her apartment, Ella was getting dressed for bed when her phone chirped. A message from her best friend Emma, lighting up the screen. "He's different, isn't he? Don't overthink it, and please don't let your past close you off to something real." Ella stared at the glowing message, the light from her phone serving as the beacon she'd been searching for months earlier, a signal of hope as she worked to mend her broken heart. Chapter 5. The Test of Trust. 6 months into their relationship, Ella's company announced layoffs. She watched friends' faces tighten with worry, their whispered conversations filling the office with an undercurrent of dread. The air itself felt heavy, thick with the scent of copy paper, burnt coffee, and the bitter hint of uncertainty. Though her own position was safe, Ella's mind churned with anxiety. Was it really the job causing this gnawing tension, or was it the secret she still carried, locked away from Danny like treasure sealed in a vault? Each week she found herself poised on the brink of confession, but the words always dissolved before she could speak them out loud. What if telling him changed everything? What if, once he knew about her lottery win, she'd see that flicker of calculation in his eyes, a glint she'd noticed in others after Jacob's betrayal? Jacob's memory crept into her thoughts, sharp and unwelcome. She remembered the way his promises had unraveled with each small deception, how his affection had been as fleeting as bubbles. Every time she'd imagined forever, she'd ended up clutching what could have been instead. Trust, she'd learned, could be a trapdoor, one she'd fallen through more than once. The fortune she kept secret was her insurance, yes, but it was also a wall, built stone by stone with each disappointment. She wanted to believe Danny was different, but the scar tissue of old hurts made her cautious. She needed proof that he cherished her, not her bank account. Financially, she could weather any storm. Emotionally, she was far more fragile, her heart armored like cash guarded in a steel-plated truck. That evening, Danny arrived carrying takeout, chicken Alfredo, salad, and breadsticks with their irresistible warmth. The comforting smells filled the apartment, circulating with the autumn air slipping through a cracked window. There were no probing questions, no pity, only the gentle clatter of containers and his steady presence beside her on the couch. "If you have to start over, I'll help you figure it out. We're in this together," he said, settling close. Feeling the weight of worry on her, his hand found hers, warm, solid, grounding her as tears pricked at her eyes. Danny didn't flinch at her vulnerability. He leaned in. She tried to brush off her fear. "I can't expect you to take care of me. If I lose my job, I'll have to figure it out myself." It came out sharper than she intended, laced with the old instincts to push people away before they could leave. But Danny only held her other hand, drawing her gently into his embrace. as long as you're with me, we're in this together, he repeated, his voice a quiet anchor. What kind of man would I be if I left you to face a crisis alone? I don't know what your past held, but I know I'm not what you're used to, and that's okay. The words pressed against the barricades she'd built, challenging her conviction that real partnership was just another mirage. She thought of Jacob again, his empty reassurances, his tendency to disappear when life got rough. Danny's steadiness felt foreign, unsettling in its sincerity. They ate, the conversation meandering from light jokes to shared dreams. With every laugh, Ella felt her guard loosen, as if Danny's kindness was quietly unlocking the rooms she'd closed off. They finished their meal and did the dishes. Ella was full, not just of the food, but from the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could trust again. For the first time in a long while, hope glimmered where fear usually lived. After Danny left, the apartment felt softer, the city's distant hum less lonely. She changed into pajamas, the scent of garlic and cream still clinging to her hair, and sank onto her bed. Her phone buzzed, the glowing screen slicing through her daydream, a call from Emma. The transition from the quiet comfort of Danny's presence to Emma's familiar voice was seamless, as if one expression of love naturally flowed into another, inviting Ella to reflect on the very things she was afraid to admit, even to herself. "So, how was dinner?" Emma's tone was upbeat, but Ella could hear the concern underneath. "It was great. Too great, if you ask me," Ella replied, her lips curving into a reluctant smile as she brushed her hair and sat on the edge of her bed. "Is that even a thing? How can dinner be too great?" Emma teased, drawing out a laugh. Ella hesitated, then confessed, "He told me if I lost my job, he'd walk through that with me. Who does that after only 6 months? What man just stays?" There was frustration tangled with awe in her voice, a mix she didn't bother to hide. "A man who knows what he wants. Danny isn't Jacob the Flake. You have to stop holding him hostage to what Jacob did." "Let him in, Ella." Emma's words, gentle but insistent, echoed in the quiet of Ella's room long after they hung up. She lay back, feeling the day's worries settle as she pressed her palms together in prayer. She asked God for a sign, that if Danny was the one meant for her, he would make it known. The prayer interlaced itself into the darkness, mingling with the steady hum of the fridge and the faint city sounds drifting through her open window. As Ella drifted toward sleep, she realized the root of her hesitation was not wealth or secrets, but the yearning for a true partner, someone who would stand beside her not for what she could give, but simply for who she was. For the first time, she felt the armor around her heart loosen, letting hope and maybe even trust slip quietly through the cracks. Chapter 6. Confession. On a foggy autumn evening, the scent of roasted garlic and tomato sauce lingered in Ella's cozy apartment, wrapping her in warmth and a hint of nostalgia. She moved around her kitchen with careful intention, plating the food she'd prepared, a meal she hoped would soothe her nerves and one Danny would like. When he arrived, Danny's laughter filled the space, and the easy flow of conversation, day recaps, weekend plans, inside jokes, let Ella's guard slip just a bit. As Danny bit into a slice of homemade cinnamon cake, his eyes widened. "Elle, this is amazing. How do you make it taste so sweet?" he said, grinning. "Almost as sweet as you." She blushed, her nerves fluttering. His gentle teasing made the moment lighter, grounding her. She'd rehearsed all the possible ways her secret could unfold, running through scenarios in her mind as Danny wiped crumbs from his lips and reached for her hand. The evening had set the stage, but now, the truth pressed at the edges of her resolve. After the plates were cleared, Ella lingered by the sink, gathering her courage. Setting a towel aside, she turned to Danny, her voice barely above a whisper. "Danny, I need to talk to you about something important." He put down his glass, concern flickering in his gaze. "Sure, sweetheart. Is everything okay?" She nodded, searching his face. "Remember when I mentioned there was a chance I might be laid off?" His brow furrowed. "Yeah, I remember. Don't tell me." "Did it happen?" Ella let the silence hang, watching Danny's reaction instead of answering right away. He shifted in his seat, his expression softening. "Listen," he said, giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't let it get you down. Layoffs happen to the best of us. You'll land on your feet." She bit her lip, the question tumbling out of her before she could stop it. "How? With no job?" Without hesitation, Danny leaned closer, his voice gentle but sure. "I'll help you out until you find something new. You don't have to go through this alone. We'll figure it out together." Ella blinked, surprised by how easily he offered his support. How can you be so certain? He smiled softly, squeezing her hand. No questions, Elle. Just trust me, okay? Let's not spend tonight worrying. We're in this together. For a moment, Ella was speechless, absorbing the ease and sincerity in Danny's words. He had a way of making her feel safe, like her fears were just passing clouds. Danny reached for the TV remote, his tone light. Can we watch our show now? As Danny turned on the television, Ella hesitated, her heart pounding. The moment felt fragile. She knew what she was about to say could change everything. She watched him settle into the couch, the flickering screen casting soft shadows across his face. Not yet, she said, her voice trembling slightly. There's something else I need to tell you. Danny glanced at her, eyebrows raised, teasing. Well, aren't you just full of surprises tonight? Ella reached into her pocket, fingers finding the velvet pouch she'd carried for months. The lottery ticket inside was more than just paper. It was a secret, a shield, and now, a bridge. She handed it to Danny, her laughter nervous but genuine. No, I'm not. But I do need you to open this. He peered at the ticket, a mix of curiosity and confusion. A lottery ticket? What's the story here? What do you think? She asked, forcing a smile. He shrugged, playful. I think you should check it. You don't want to miss out on a possible win, especially if you're jobless, he joked, and they both laughed. Ella drew in a shaky breath, meeting his eyes. Actually, I've already checked. It's a winner. His eyes widened, laughter fading into surprise. Awesome! What did you win, $20? She shook her head, nerves and relief mingling in her voice. No, more like millions. Danny went silent, absorbing the news as the television murmured in the background and a plane droned overhead. Congratulations, honey. I am happy for you. When did you find out? Several months ago? Really? Danny was confused. Ella took a deep breath. Yes, really. I've wanted to tell you since the day we met, but I had to be sure you were here for me and not for what I had. Danny was silent again. Then a deep, genuine chuckle escaped him. Elle, you could have told me you were on your second bankruptcy, and I'd still be here. I don't care about your bank account. I care about the woman who makes the best pasta I've ever had and listens to all my wacky dreams. Ella's heart eased, the tension melting away. She smiled, feeling seen and cherished. So I guess you don't really need help with bills after all? Danny teased, lifting the remote again. She grinned, a playful spark in her eyes. No, I don't, and I didn't lose my job either. I just wanted to see how you'd react, he laughed, shaking his head. And, Ella leaned in, her voice soft but confident, let's just say you passed with flying colors and fully unlocked my heart in the process. Chapter 7. Love rekindled winter settled over the city in a soft hush, snow drifting past the windows and blanketing the streets in sparkling white. Inside Ella's apartment, warmth radiated from twinkling strings of Christmas lights Danny had strung across the ceiling. The scent of simmering nutmeg mingled with the aroma of a burning cinnamon candle, filled the cozy rooms with warmth. The comforting blend wrapped itself around every corner, inviting memories of holidays and laughter. Laughter spilled from the kitchen as Ella finished plating appetizers, her cheeks flushed from the oven's heat and Danny's off-key singing. When he started belting out Jingle Bell Rock with a wooden spoon for a microphone, she joined in, giggling, the sound weaving their shared joy into the festive air. Since Ella had come clean about her lottery win, her connection with Danny only deepened. Their days were stitched together by little rituals, whispered dreams over morning coffee, inside jokes traded while folding laundry, and the lingering taste of cinnamon from the first dessert they'd ever baked together. What she'd once feared, a shift, a distance after her confession, never happened. If anything, the honesty had made their bond feel richer, more real. The doorbell chimed. Emma was first to arrive, bundled in a coat dusted with snow and clutching a still warm golden sock-it-to-me cake. Hey, I brought carbs and good vibes, she teased, handing the cake to Danny, who grinned and ushered her inside. Ella was in the bathroom, dabbing blush onto her cheeks as Emma popped her head in. Their voices bounced off the tiles, soft and familiar. Emma lowered her voice and nudged Ella. So, tell me, are you still reeling from that Jacob drama? Ella set the blush down, her smile tinged with memory. Jacob and I were together nearly 4 years. He was charming, always talking about forever, but there were cracks. When I overheard him on the phone with his ex, now his fiancée, it stung. He'd always made me feel like I was too much or not enough, never just me. The breakup wrecked me for a while. I felt lost, like I'd failed at something big. Letting go of him and the ring means finally closing that chapter. Emma squeezed her shoulder, her tone gentle. You really deserve this, Ella. I'm so happy for you. Her words landed like a warm hug, and Ella felt her chest loosen. Ella motioned for Emma to join her in the bedroom, where the lamp cast a soft golden glow over the bedspread. She reached into her closet, fingers brushing past winter coats and holiday sweaters, and finally pulled out a shoebox from the back. Inside, protected in a velvet pouch, was her old engagement ring, the last relic of a love that had faded before it had a chance to bloom. The metal felt cold in her hand, heavy with old promises. She handed the pouch to Emma, her voice barely above a whisper. I think I'm finally ready to let go. Good for you, Emma murmured, pressing the pouch between Ella's palms. Out with the old. Tonight's about new beginnings. Back in the living room, the atmosphere sparkled with energy. The savory smell of glazed ham and pine from the Christmas tree mixed with the laughter of guests. Friends and family crowded the couch, trading stories as holiday tunes played in the background. Someone started a game of charades, and soon the room was filled with shouts and groans, hands waving wildly. Between rounds, plates passed from hand to hand. Tart cranberry sauce, creamy mashed potatoes, sweet bites of Emma's cake. Suddenly, Danny clinked his glass, calling for quiet. The room hushed, electric with anticipation. He pulled Ella close, his hand warm and steady. We're so lucky to have all of you here tonight. Thanks for braving the cold and making this a night to remember. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls. Ella nodded, heart thudding as Danny knelt by the fireplace. The simple band he held glimmered in the firelight, and the world seemed to pause. His words were soft, but carried through the room. Ella, will you marry me? The sweetness of mulled wine and cinnamon lingered on her tongue as she sank to her knees beside him, tears spilling freely, not from sadness but from gratitude and hope. That felt as fresh as the first. Snowfall. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling with joy, a promise wrapped in warmth, light, and the scent of new beginnings. Cheers exploded, echoing off the walls as guests crowded around to hug and congratulate them. In that instant, Ella realized her fortune wasn't measured by lottery winnings. What Danny had given her was far more precious. A love rooted in trust, laughter, and the courage to let go and embrace everything the present had to offer. Epilogue, a new chapter. The late spring sun dipped low, painting the horizon in soft gold as Ella and Danny slipped away from their reception into the garden. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the hall behind them, mingling with the faint scent of lilacs. Ella leaned against Danny's shoulder, the simple wedding band on her finger catching the last light of day. It's strange, she whispered. How everything started with one terrible night. I thought my world was ending. Danny squeezed her hand, his smile warm and steady. Maybe it had to end, for this to begin. She let out a quiet laugh, feeling lighter than she had in years. The ache of old wounds had softened, replaced by the solid comfort of his presence. For the first time, the future felt like a story she wanted to write. As twilight deepened and the first stars appeared, they stood together in the garden. Two people who had found love not in perfection but in trust, honesty, and the courage to begin again. Thank you for listening to Choosing Peace by author Ella Logan. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to LA's Listening Lounge for more stories of love, life, and resilience. Until next time, may you always choose peace.